Now, folks, one thing you could always count on from a G meeting, G7, G8, or G20, some consensus about the need for more flexibility on China's policy regarding the UN. It was common ground for foreign leaders, one they will not have at this weekend's G20, thanks to China's decision just this week to allow the UN to strengthen. So where does that leave the G20? To find out, we've asked Leon Brittan to join us. Lord Brittan was a senior member of Margaret Thatcher's cabinet and vice president of the European Commission, responsible for relations with the U.S., China, Japan, and the World Trade Organization. He is currently a vice chairman at UBS Investment Bank. Lord Brittan, let's just tackle that question right off the top. Where are the G20 leaders going to find common ground this weekend?
Well, they may find common ground on financial regulation, particularly now that the U.S. is apparently moving rapidly towards legislation on this. That's something which there may be common ground on. Banking levies and this kind of stuff, as well as the actual regulation of the financial industry.
Banking regulations, or at least banking levies perhaps, but not necessarily hedge funds. The Europeans have consistently taken a much harder line on hedge funds than the Americans have, and according to the compromise legislation reached between the House and the Senate, there is still a little bit of room for banks to invest in hedge funds, which is something that presumably Europeans wouldn't support. Well,
there isn't a European consensus on that, and the legislation currently going through the European Parliament has got a bit stuck on that. So they'll be able to have a useful discussion on that. And there will be, obviously, a discussion on the whole issue of stimulus versus no stimulus, but there'll not be an agreement on that.
Not an agreement, but how much discord? These agreements, well, as you well know, you've attended multilateral meetings, you know that they tend not to be the kinds of affairs where sparks tend to fly. But really, right now, going into this meeting, President Obama has staked out a very firm line on the need for more stimulus. German Chancellor Angela Merkel has staked out a very firm line on the need to cut spending. Just how contentious could it be?
I don't think it'll be that contentious. I think they'll find a form of words, and the form of words will say that, of course, in deciding on the budgetary consolidation that everybody is agreed to be necessary to reduce the debt, they should have regard to the importance of not causing damage to the growth that is beginning in all the countries in the world, and that each country will have to do it in its own way, taking regard of the specificities of that country. That's the kind of language which will avoid an open confrontation.
But very briefly, Lord Brittan, with treasuries trading at 3%, is President Obama and Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner, are they deluding themselves into believing that the United States will never face these kinds of sovereign crises?
Well, 30 years ago, I thought the Americans would run into the ground. It would seem that the so-called seigniorage effect, which having a dominant currency gives you, seems to have averted the evil hour. Whether it will avert the evil hour forever remains to be seen.
Lord Brittan, thank you very much for joining me. That is Lord Leon Brittan, a former vice president at the EC, looking ahead to this weekend's G20.